A very good morning to all. It's a pleasure in inviting Dr. Bhandari, who has obtained his Doctor of Medicine, MD Pediatric Medicine from Rajasthan Medical University. He is the member, National Technical Board of Nutrition, NITI Aayog, Government of India. Sir has an experience of over 4 decades as a clinical pediatrician and expertise in project management making, which made him a formidable choice for advocacy, design, and implementing the policies and programs. He's been the advisor, consultant, and mentor to various leading and reputed organizations in India and abroad, and has worked across multiple streams and organizations, both private as well as public. And he's been a thought leader in cross-sectional fields ranging from nutrition, women and child health, agriculture, and sustainability. He's been the member of Technical Board of Nutrition, member of National Millets Task Force, Government of India, and he's been an advisor to Maharashtra Village Social Transformation Foundation. And he's also the subject matter expert and advisor for CMAM, Community Management of Acute Malnutrition. He's also a technical expert for health and nutrition, reproduction, child and adolescents health, and child rights. We welcome you, sir. The platform is yours.
Thank you. And sabko namaskar. So I must congratulate ICAR, IIMR under the leadership of Dr. Tunapi, CAPA, and the other institutes who have joined in this wonderful endeavor. There seems to be a wide representation across sectors, a very cross-sectional interdisciplinary team that we have today, and great to hear to some of them. Since yesterday, I believe we have discussed more about the external ecosystem, the terrestrial, the oceanic, the atmosphere, and maybe the entire cosmos. I will try to bring attention to the internal ecosystem that we have within our body. And that is where the genesis of most of these diseases come into play. So in my talk, I would dwell upon the climate change part and the mitigation and the adaptation strategies that the government is pursuing, and how we can reach to the goal of sustainable development goals of 2030. That would be the focus. So you see, humanity is at a crossroads currently, and it's a humanitarian crisis along with climate change. Sadly, this tragedy is human-made. We have not inherited this earth from our forefathers. We have borrowed it from our children. And therefore, it is imperative that we get to put our act together and work towards achieving this goal. 26th March 2022, we celebrated the Earth Hour and showed our solidarity by switching off lights. And we took a silent pledge to reduce carbon footprint. And the UN SDG 2030, that includes 17 goals. And I believe most of these goals, climate change is cross-cutting against most of these goals, whether it be poverty, hunger, good health, well-being, clean water, sanitation, clean energy, and climate change cuts across all of them. So in a way, climate change is a unifying factor because there are no boundaries to climate change. So this unifies because it goes above religion, caste, gender, geographies, political ideologies. And therefore, let me tell you, where do we stand today? There was a a, a very expert group of WHO and other scientists who gathered in Seattle, and they observed that 1 in 2 persons on the planet is malnourished. Now you would question, and that would mean something like 3.5 billion people are malnourished. So what does this whole image of malnutrition go to? Right from wasting, stunting, micronutrient deficiencies, and the conundrum of non-communicable diseases like hypertension, hyperlipidemia, obesity. So this entire, if you look at this whole spectrum, we find that such a large population is malnourished on this planet. We have the war in Russia and Ukraine, which has led to high inflation. We have the climate crisis, which affects terrestrial and marine life. You'll be surprised that phytoplanktons, which is a microalgae, they produce something like 50 to 70% of the oxygen that we require. So these are so vital to be in the ocean and to be generated, because they are such a wonderful source of oxygen supply. And we find that there is a lot of nutrition in the algae spirulina, which is derived from a very controlled environment of temperature and pressure where it grows, has tremendous nutritional properties. So everything, whether it be the animal, the agriculture, the ocean, they all contribute to the nutrition security in a way. Now, what has come about is, due to industrial farming, our soil has turned into sand. And why I say so? Because soil is living. And that is what I meant by the external ecosystem. There would be something, according to a UN report, 27,000 microbes which are going extinct every year. And if we do not, mend our system, then by 2035, 2040, we will grow 40% less food than what we are growing today. And that we will have to supply to 9 billion mouths. So look at the huge disparity and the challenge that lies ahead if our production goes down and our mouths to feed have to increase. How do we really get along to replenish our soil? And the earlier speaker who said about Sadhguru and the earth buddies, certainly that would be the way forward, that we can build up the organic content of soil, which is currently below 0.8%, to something like 3 to 6%, so that the water retention is there. So the evidence that exists today is that there is an epidemiological shift from communicable to non-communicable diseases, and that is a major challenge. And most of these are climate related also. So that is why the issue of climate changes becomes important. Then the other thing is that of malnutrition. We have 1 in 2 children who are anemic, 1 in 3 who are stunted, 1 in 4 child who has micronutrient deficiencies, and 1 in 5 who's wasted. That means small and thin babies. They are, just skin and bones. So that is the kind of on the global hunger index also we rank poorly, while we have the highest production of cereals, the legumes, the milk and fruits. Still the scourge of malnutrition looms large on us. And of course, the socioeconomic variables, they get accentuated due to climate change. Now, the buzzword has been immunity lately after post-COVID. And how do we build up on this immunity, that is one of the biggest perplexing questions which is raised in front of many of the scientists. So COVID pressed the pause button, and we now chant the mantra of one health, one planet, and one future, and leaving no one behind. Because if anybody, unless everyone is safe, no one is safe. And that is what COVID proved. So WHO estimates that about 13 million deaths around the world each year due to environmental causes. And it says that the climate crisis is the single biggest health threat facing humanity. It further estimates that about 8.30 lakh people die from diarrheal diseases caused by polluted water and poor sanitation. So we clearly see that there is an imbalance in the ecosystem, and there is a tremendous loss of biodiversity. Human beings are encroaching on the land, the habitat which was occupied by animals and birds, and this encroachment has led to human-animal contact, and we find that the zoonotic diseases, that is the diseases which are transmitted from animals to human beings, they are on the rise. And COVID is one example where the transmission from a bat, we presume, happened to a human being. And deforestation and flooding leading to less carbon sequestration and soil erosion, of course, are met. So it is true that we may not vacate these spaces, but then as prudent and responsible citizens, we need to find solutions as to how these spaces be utilized. So when I do a mapping of the vulnerability of at-risk population, I see that the health threats have intensified, and also new threats have emerged due to climate change. If I were to count those risks attributable to climate change, we find respiratory illnesses due to air pollution. There has been an ICMR study which shows that indoor air pollution causes respiratory allergies and diseases. COVID was exacerbated during the time when we had the Farali burning and high air pollution in Delhi. And it is no secret that this comorbidity along with COVID is a tremendous factor which contributes to increased morbidity and mortality. Then the heat shocks, which are more prevalent in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. We find that deaths due to cardiovascular diseases and respiratory diseases, which are stressors in climate change, they show an increase. The vector-borne diseases, especially malaria, dengue fever, and there is a very strong correlation between climate change, change in temperature, change in humidity for the proliferation of these vectors. And just the other day, I was listening that Bengaluru witnessed an untimely spell of rain, and there is an increase in dengue cases. More than 2,000 cases have been diagnosed. So this is how climate change is affecting the occupational hazards, which could be chemical, biological, physical. They all happen due to excessive mining and other issues. We see a lot of cases of pneumoconiosis, silicosis, bagasosis, which happen due to occupational hazards. Then the waterborne diseases, diarrhea, giardia, and algal blooms and cryptosporidium. All these again are attributed to climate, to water, unsafe water and poor sanitation. I bring your attention to cardiovascular diseases. As I said, that ICMR has pointed that there is an increase in these due to climate-related changes, and mental health also finds an important place. It is not just the deaths, but it is the suffering that happens due to climate change. Malnutrition, yes, that whenever there is a crisis or an emergency situation, the children, the women, and the vulnerable population will be most affected. So that again becomes important. And we find more than 1 million premature deaths due to climate related. Now I'll bring you to a deadly dozen. The climate sensitive diseases which will basically unfold and increase due to climate change effects. We have the bird flu, the H5N1 in the farmed poultry. We have babesiosis, which is a malaria-like illness caused by ticks. Cholera, because cholera, due to Vibrio cholera, thrives in warmer waters. So as you find that the waters become warm, global warming, the cholera could come up again. Ebola, which is lethal to primates and humans, and we have no cure for Ebola. Parasites which spread between humans and livestock and wildlife due to higher temperature and more rainfall. They will find an increased period of transmission. Plague, especially affected by rodents, which are the carriers, they would be they will carry the infected flea to places and have epidemics. Red tides, which is a poisonous algal bloom in coastal waters due to warming. Rift Valley fever, sleeping sickness distributed due to the tsetse fly. Usually this is in Africa that you have, and tuberculosis, both human and bovine. You have bovine in animals also, tuberculosis, that could find a recrudescence, and yellow fever. So in other words, the reason I drew attention that all these 12, that is a dozen, I call them the dirty dozen diseases, they will become more, they will proliferate and our population will be at risk. It affects both the climate change, both vectors and hosts, and disturbs the balance. So humidity plus heat, we have the wet bulb. And if the temperature goes above 35 degrees Celsius, then the outdoor activity will be debilitated and there could be risk of death also. So this is a dangerous combination of humidity plus heat. Now, let me come to the, while we are grappling with the climate change and the resilience of the health system, modeling and health risk and climate variability become important. We have to have the data metrics, not only for deaths due to climate change, but also the mental stress, the delay in treatment, the disruption of supply chain, of medicine, of food, which is adversely affected, and the fecal-oral transmission of diseases. All these should be included in the data metrics. And while we can map the vulnerability of at-risk and poor and marginalized people, because women, children, they are disproportionately affected, and also the old people, and livelihoods are lost due to floods and cyclones and any of these tragedies which occur. So I have a 6-point prescription for healthy green recovery. The first being preserve and safeguard nature. Second is access to safe water and sanitation. Third would be healthy energy transition. So that transition, whether we call the hydrogen or the renewable energy, that has to be seamless and smooth. We have to promote healthy, sustainable food system. There was a Eat Lancet report, commission which was set up. 69 countries came together, and the crux of the matter was that healthy diets, nutrition, climate resilience, and sustainable agriculture. These are the 4 pillars on which our humanity will have to survive, and not only survive, but thrive. So we have to, so that is the 4th one, the healthy, sustainable food system and healthy livable cities. And then we have to stop further pollution. Now, there has to be an executive order passed for climate change priority and equity, and the whole of the government and the whole of the communities, they have to work in tandem. It is not the business of government alone, and it should not be the business of government alone. We as a society have to come together on a multi-stakeholder platform rather, and build up partnerships and collaborations where we can gauge and assess and evaluate our strategy for a high social return on investment. Social return on investment would be how each stakeholder is benefited in this whole, in this whole process. So it is not just one person, but the entire, all the stakeholders. That means the farmer, the consumer, and all the people in the value chain and the supply chain. So government of and these partnerships we have, there is a program which is Uchai, which is Understanding Climate Change and Health Associations in India, Uchai, and that is running. And we have TERI, PHFI, AIMS, NIHS, IIT, IIPA, and GeoHealth, toxicology, all these come together, and that is why I said it was a cross-cutting issue. Now, what the government has done is, first of all, they have acknowledged this problem. We have created 16 centers of excellence. Each sector has a particular theme, like vector-borne, allergen, waterborne, occupational health, IEC, surveillance, and these centers of excellence are supposed to deliver state-level action plans, surveillance, build up on capacity, do research and development, and documentation. So these are the centers of excellence which have been created under the Ministry of Health. Unfortunately, when I look at the COP26 and the other, health doesn't get that kind of a center stage. And that is why we find that these, even in India in 2019, there were 8 missions on climate change in India. But then they added a 9th mission, which was the health mission, to bring focus. Of course, the 10th was on coastal, but it is important to design these programs, national and states, and they could be area-specific programs and need-specific. So in Orissa, like we have the problem of mining. In North India, it would be a different problem. So it has to be a state-specific action plan. And fortunately, Government of India has created those structures, and we need to put those structures in the implementation mode. Yesterday, Dr. Dalwai was speaking about biotech, bioenzymes, biofuel, biocompound, bioprocessing, everything, and I was reminded of meeting that I attended in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, USA, where they have a department for bioterrorism. And if you have a box of anthrax and you throw it open, the whole population could be at risk. And we do not know the genesis of COVID, but even if it was like lab made and it, the whole world. So I hope that form of bioterrorism never happens. So the government of India has a mitigation and adaptation planning, and there is a integrated health information platform which has been created with support from WHO, where digital technology, IoT, big data analytics, all are put together to find the vulnerability index. And 28 states have developed their own action plan, you would be happy to know. And there is an environmental cell. There is a multi-level task force under the health secretary, and adaptation planning for disaster management is there. So the 5 major buckets, I'll just conclude, to reaching at the granular level, at the ground level, so that we reach each person, and the last mile connectivity, there we have to increase public awareness. Now, climate change, as people perceive, is not just increase in temperature. Even the temperature fluctuation has a very adverse effect in terms of microhydrology and food insecurity. So those temperature fluctuations have also to be recorded, and we need to see what can grow where, because most of the crops are shifting northwards. So that becomes an important thing. Use of social media, IEC campaigns, that is what the government is doing, bringing a knowledge synthesis and developing community level modules which go right down to the district level. They are being developed, where Medical Council of India, the Nursing Council, the homeopathy, and Indian medicine. So all these, as an integrative response. So these partnerships are important. I cannot conclude without acknowledging that millets, in my, all these years that I have had a deep dive into millets, I find them as a near perfect solution. You have, these are, even if you don't, I never like to call anything like a super grain, but I would certainly recommend millets as smart, good for you, good for the planet, and good for the farmer. Millets are, in health terms, the variety of colors. Look at the plethora of colors that millets offers. I call them all colors of health, and natural colors. No other grain can offer such a plethora of beautiful colors. So to my mind, millet is not an option. It is an imperative. Whether we look at these diseases, we have ample of evidence to show statistical improvement in growth parameters, anemia, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, diabetes, you say that. And more so, our internal ecosystem, where you have 100 trillion bacteria, 10 times more than the cells of the body, which have fiber as their food. If you do not feed them with fiber, they get angry. And these bacteria, the Lactobacillus acidophilus, Bifido, Rhamnosus GG, these, the gut microbiota, if they get angry, they go and impinge on the cell wall of the intestine, causing an inflammatory bowel reaction. So this is where I wanted to connect the external ecosystem with the internal ecosystem, which has tremendous role in the way these diseases come, and the way the progress and the prognosis, how you will come out of it, because millet has the prebiotic property, the fiber, and the resistant starch, which goes undigested in the large intestine, acts as a substrate for these bacteria to act as prebiotic, and that is amply shown in the postbiotics, the butyric acid and the propionic acid. So I conclude with this, that when biology meets with nature's wisdom, that is where the magic begins. So thank you so much.